This is VOA Africa.
Good evening. I'm Esther Gidhu-Ewart. It's Thursday, November 28th. This is Africa 54. It's Thanksgiving Day in the United States, and one Ethiopian community center is welcoming new refugees with a Thanksgiving meal. Meet the Soweto-born and French-trained chef tickling South African palates with new flavors of traditional foods turned into fine dining. And in the world's diamond capital, the fight against illicit mining is floundering. We'll have those stories in a moment, but first to Nigeria, where 47 men appeared in court on Wednesday on homosexuality charges after they were arrested by police in a hotel raid. Nigeria outlawed homosexuality in 2014, but no one has yet been convicted of it. However, activists say the law is being used by police to extort bribes from people in exchange for not pursuing charges. Jason Albano reports.
57 Nigerian men are facing 10 years in jail. Their crime? Homosexuality. 47 of them pleaded innocent in court Wednesday. 10 chose not to appear. They were arrested in a police raid of a hotel in 2018. Police say they were being initiated into a gay club. The accused say they were attending a birthday party.
I just wish the case would be quickly dismissed.
Homosexuality is illegal in many conservative African countries. Some religious groups call it a corrupting Western import. Homosexual acts were outlawed in Nigeria in 2014, including same-sex marriage and public displays of affection. Lawyers tell Reuters no one has yet been convicted under the law. Instead, Human Rights Watch says the law has been used to extort bribes from suspects in exchange for not pursuing charges. One of the accused men agree.
The police officers will stop you and then get you arrested, extort money from you, and begin to call you names. So for me, that is not what the law talked about or says.
Spokesman for Nigeria's police and Ministry of Justice could not be reached for comment. Activists working to protect the rights of sexual minorities in Nigeria say they're tired of harassment.
The law is just full of a lot of loopholes. And I guess that is one fundamental reason why the law will never be implemented. But the unfortunate thing is that it serves the political ego of police who paraded these innocent 57 men on national television, demonized them, exposed their HIV status to journalists.
Bail was set at more than $1,600. The case has been adjourned until December 11th.
Jason Albano of Reuters with that report. The security situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo is deteriorating, and the battle to contain the deadly Ebola virus is suffering. Militia fighters in eastern Congo killed 4 people and injured several others in attacks on 2 Ebola response centers on Thursday. Mai fighters and local residents are sometimes attacking health facilities because they believe Ebola does not exist, and in other cases because of resentment that they are not benefiting from the influx of donor funding. Meanwhile, activists Thursday gathered in front of the United Nations Stabilization Mission headquarters in Goma to call for justice for the death of a colleague during protests in Beni. Rebels believed to belong to the group Allied Democratic Forces killed 8 people in an overnight raid, stoking residents' fury at the perceived inaction of both the government and a UN peacekeeping mission. The violence by the ADF and a group of militias, a criminal bands near Congo's borders with Uganda and Rwanda, is hampering efforts to eradicate a more than year-long Ebola outbreak. It's Thanksgiving Day in the United States, and many new refugees in America experience culture shock when they first arrive in the U.S. Many have to deal with a new language, culture, and even holidays But settled refugees can play a big role in helping new arrivals adapt to life in America. One example is the Ethiopian Community Center, which hosts a Thanksgiving meal every year for new refugees. VOA's Shanaz Nafis has more.
For newly arrived refugees in United States, a Thanksgiving get-together may be as foreign as this live Irish dance performance. This annual Thanksgiving holiday aims to help refugees adjust to life and the many cultures in America. The Ethiopian community hosted this gathering just outside Washington, D.C. The refugees here come mostly from war-torn countries like Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Today we enjoy about Thanksgiving party, and all of the people, especially Afghans, coming in this party.
I like Thanksgiving. I greet everyone who are here, and I thank God for American people for everything we give us today.
This event is especially meaningful for Babu Adu, who fled Nigeria 4 years ago to escape violence in his homeland.
My background as a refugee, that means a lot to me because I look around and I see a lot of different faces and cultures, and I got very emotional.
4 years ago, Adu's life was full of challenges when he started his new life in the United States. The Ethiopian Community Development Council helped Babu resettle in Virginia. But organizers say in actuality, the entire community pitches in.
The whole idea is to introduce our refugees to the larger community so that there will be an opportunity to know, to learn from one another.
Some volunteer simply to help people feel welcomed.
I love to welcome new people to our community and to bring in and accept everyone. And I wanted to share a Thanksgiving is to sit down and bring families from all over the place together to share a meal.
Many say they are thankful to have fled their troubled homelands, but also hope one day they will be reunited with their loved ones.
My brother is in Nigeria and I've not seen him for 4 years. That is, sometimes I get sad when I think about it, but you know, I would love for him to come here and join me, yeah?
Shanaz Nafis, VOA News, Arlington, Virginia.
The Thanksgiving Day holiday in America originated centuries ago with a harvest celebration in Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1621. For many Americans, the holiday is also a time to celebrate the arrival of the first immigrants to the New World. But historians say it is important to remember that without the help of the Wampanoag tribe, Europeans back in those days may not have survived to celebrate. Here's VOA's Christina Kisedo-Smith.
It's been 397 since a group of pilgrims arrived in the New World from Europe on board the Mayflower. On arrival, they found out that they were already people in the New World. The Wampanoag had already been on the continent for thousands of years, and historians say helped create the early history of the United States.
They had, and still have today, rich culture. And so it's really important to work against the misinformation and stereotypes about American Indians not being part of the fabric of American culture today.
Renee Goki is the educational coordinator at the National Museum of the American Indian. She says the Wampanoag already had agricultural and political systems in place.
Well, to begin, Native peoples often had representative types of government. So settlers learned about those styles of government and representation.
Historians say the first year on the American continent was extremely difficult for pilgrims and settlers. They did not know the weather and terrain, and they arrived too late in the year to grow their own crops. Many died of hunger and cold. A Wampanoag member took the initiative to sign a peace alliance between both communities and offered support in agriculture, defense, and weapons.
The Wampanoag actually, along with English governor at the time, John Carver, they signed a treaty for mutual peace and to protect each other in times of war.
1 year after the peace agreement was signed, the settlers and pilgrims celebrated their first successful harvest in 1621. The Wampanoag joined the celebration and brought their own traditional food.
So the Three Sisters are about corn, beans, and squash. And when people plant the corn first, they allow the stalk to grow. And then they plant the bean. Beans are high in nitrogen. So it's like an automatic fertilizer. So the corn stalk grows and the bean wraps around, and then they plant the squash. Squash leaves are huge.
The Three Sisters method are the three main agriculture crops of several indigenous groups in the Americas. Part of Freddie Buttery's job as a chef at the National Museum of American Indian is to teach a new generation the dietary contributions of the indigenous community, so he created a salad based on these three foods.
I think it symbolizes a lot as far as this time of year. It symbolizes just the ability to live, you know, and I think that's what the Three Sisters represent.
250 years later, President Abraham Lincoln declared a national holiday to give thanks and heal the wounds of civil war in the country. Cristina Caicedo-Smith, VOA News, Washington.
Soweto-born and French-trained chef Wandile Mabaso is tickling South African palates with the flavors bubbling out of his new restaurant, Le Creative. There, he specializes in transforming the country's traditional foods into fine dining. Sisipo Sikweyiya has the details.
I don't write recipes, I don't cook by recipe. I just get inspiration from nature, things around me, current situations, climate, the weather.
Meet Chef Wandile Mabaso, the owner of one of Johannesburg's hottest new restaurants. Set in the upmarket Bryanston neighborhood, the newly opened Le Creatif is taking South Africa's culinary world by storm, with its high-end fusion cuisine inspired by tastes from around the world. Mabaso has spent over a decade under the tutelage of some of the world's greatest chefs, including Elaine Dukas. But the Soweto-born chef said he decided to come home to help promote other young talent and make fine dining more accessible.
There is obviously the people in the country would look at a high-end place as a white-owned place, white-dominated place, you know, and then the fact that I'm black already puts a stamp on it, saying that, listen, this is accessible, you know. I'm just like, I'm one of you, I'm from the same township as you in Soweto, so you are more than welcome, you know. So that in itself is an element which draws the middle class people or even the lower class people in, you know, and just help them understand fine dining and high-end cuisine. We've got crumbs here.
By incorporating staple traditional foods like maize, sorghum and fermented milk in some of his dishes, Mabaso said he tries to create a sensory experience for his guests, evoking memories of what it was like to grow up in a township. And his patrons can't get enough.
I'm really, really excited about the fact that this place is black-owned, owned by a young black man. And I love that he's this bold in the way that he's gone and sort of interpreted his vision. And so I love the passion, I love the ambition behind this place. I find it extremely inspiring.
That was Sisipo Sikweyiya of Reuters reporting. Zimbabwe is planning to ditch its plan to remove grain subsidies next year, according to state media. The government says the move will protect impoverished citizens from rising food prices. The country is experiencing its worst economic crisis in a decade, marked by soaring inflation and shortages of food, fuel, medicines, and electricity. Half of Zimbabwe's population needs food aid after a devastating drought across southern Africa. Zimbabwe's grain agency buys grain from farmers and releases it onto the market at subsidized prices, costing its treasury tens of millions of dollars. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, in South Africa, the fight to bring illegal miners into the formal fold. We'll be right back.
alongside Nigeria. We supply the petroleum, Mr. Supplier. Y'all know what it is, the bad records. Get it on. Too many haters started, I ain't gonna be here. I'm recording the break track in my pen, I need pay. Never front. Never front.
I'm Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. Award-winning chef Andre Bayala is the only artisanal chocolate maker in Burkina Faso. But what makes him stand out, and a particular favorite of his Ouagadougou customers, is that he mixes typical everyday ingredients in his chocolate, all sourced from home. One of Bayala's favorites is moringa, a leaf that is used in cooking, grows in people's backyards, and that some claim to have healing properties. Bayala's other ingredients include sumbala, a condiment widely used in West African dishes, hibiscus flowers used in juices throughout the region, as well as sesame seeds, ginger, and dried locally sourced fruits. Next up, Hollywood luxury doesn't stop on Rodeo Drive. It goes right to the dogs. In West Hollywood, pet owners can find the ultimate luxury gift for their beloved animals this season. Dog apparel is getting more sophisticated, as pet owners are looking to dress their dogs in a certain style. For Christmas this year, everything is ready to be a party outfit. Cashmere extravagance, all handmade with Swarovski accessories and crystal neckties, plus pearls. There's also rhinestone collars to give your pet that touch of Hollywood bling. And finally, a British biotech company is developing a method of dyeing clothes that taps into the bright colors of birds and butterflies and uses microorganisms to recreate them on garments. Established methods of dyeing with synthetic pigments involve large concentrations of hazardous chemicals, such as chromium and other heavy metal salts, and consume a lot of energy and water. ColorFix's method uses no hazardous chemicals and cuts water use by almost 90%, as well as being carried out at lower temperatures than traditional dyeing. And that's what's trending today.
Here in the U.S., the House impeachment inquiry into U.S. President Donald Trump is focusing on whether the White House delayed promised military aid to Ukraine until its leader agreed to do the president a political favor. VOA's diplomatic correspondent Cindy Sain takes a closer look at that military aid at the center of the controversy and why it's so critical for Ukraine.
In 2014, Russia invaded eastern Ukraine and illegally annexed the Ukrainian territory of Crimea. Since then, the United States has provided a total of more than $1.6 billion in security assistance to Ukraine to defend itself against its stronger neighbor, Russia, amid an ongoing armed conflict with Russian-backed separatists in eastern Ukraine's Donbass region.
So since that time, both the Obama and the Trump administrations have provided Ukraine more significant military equipment, things like counter-battery radars, night vision goggles, Humvees, helmets, and with the Trump administration, more lethal equipment, which the Obama administration has been unwilling to provide, things like anti-tank missiles, as well as more training that is helping Ukraine battle Russian separatists in the east.
The Wilson Center's Will Pomerantz says former President Barack Obama was cautious about getting the U.S. too involved in the conflict.
Obama, at the start of the crisis, was always looking for what he described as an off-ramp of trying to somehow downplay the crisis and somehow end the ongoing battle in Ukraine. And the fear was that if the United States escalated assistance, then the Russians would escalate assistance, and it would just become a bigger conflict.
The Trump administration approved lethal aid, including anti-tank missiles, although Brookings Institution's Michael O'Hanlon says President Donald Trump himself holds less favorable views of Ukraine.
I think that ultimately in his gut, President Trump has not really wanted to help Ukraine, but ultimately his head and his advisors told him that he had to.
In February, Congress approved a total of $391 million in security aid to Ukraine for this fiscal year, including military training, which experts say was sorely needed.
Ukraine, at the time of the beginning of this war, the army, like much of the country, had fallen into various levels of decay and corruption, and it wasn't able to even exist as a fighting force.
O'Hanlon says the aid has dramatically improved Ukraine's capabilities and morale, even though it is a small amount compared to U.S. military aid to other countries.
We give a lot more aid to Afghanistan, I think in the several $billion-dollar a year range. We give, I think, at this point, perhaps comparable amount of aid to Iraq.
Career State Department officials testified during recent impeachment hearings that the aid also sends a crucial signal to Russia that America considers Ukraine a close ally and has its back.
We also provide security assistance so that Ukraine can negotiate a peace with Russia from a position of strength. The human toll continues to climb in this ongoing war, with 14,000 Ukrainian lives lost since Russia's 2014 invasion.
In early December, representatives from Ukraine, Russia, France, and Germany will gather in Paris for peace talks on ending the conflict. The U.S. is not planning to take part. Cindy Sain, VOA News, Washington.
Britain's royal family is facing a crisis. Prince Andrew, the second son of Queen Elizabeth, says he is stepping back from public duties following a sharp backlash against a recent television interview where he was asked about his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, a U.S. financier and convicted sex offender who killed himself in a New York jail in August. Henry Ridgwell reports from London.
Riding out in the grounds of Windsor Castle, Prince Andrew was recently spotted for the first time since announcing he was stepping back from public duties. That followed a public backlash from this interview, in which the prince was asked about his friendship with the American convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and why he had stayed at Epstein's house after his conviction.
I had to go and see him and talk to him.
Prince Andrew's lack of compassion for Epstein's victims was shocking, says royal analyst Richard Fitzwilliams.
What it showed was someone completely out of touch with his audience and, in my opinion, with reality. He had to step back from his royal duties. He had basically become toxic.
One of Epstein's alleged trafficking victims claims she was forced to have sex with the prince once when she was 17. Andrew has repeatedly denied the accusations and said he is willing to give evidence to US investigators. Andrew has caused royal embarrassment in the past, says Fitzwilliams.
His marriage to Sarah Ferguson, she proved a disaster as a member of the royal family and has been responsible for numerous embarrassments.
From a prince seen as abusing royal privilege to another struggling with the scrutiny it brings. Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle have spoken of their dismay at press intrusion and are taking legal action against several newspapers.
They simply have to accept that there is going to be a certain amount of cooperation with the press and global interest in everything they do because of who they are.
There was more unwelcome scrutiny when the Duke of Edinburgh, the Queen's husband, was involved in a car accident in January. The royals were drawn into the Brexit crisis in September when the Supreme Court ruled that Prime Minister Boris Johnson had misled the Queen when he asked her to suspend Parliament.
This has been a dreadful year for the monarchy, the worst since the 1990s. But there's absolutely no reason to believe that that will go on into next year if the royals get a grip with their advisors and their press officers, and also if Harry and Meghan can be persuaded that there is a course that will make them happy as members of the royal family.
The Queen will try to draw a line under a difficult year when she gives her televised Christmas Day speech, an event closely watched by many in Britain. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
The first South African project to bring illegal miners into the formal fold is being plagued by violence in the diamond capital, Kimberley, dealing a major blow to national efforts to stem a booming illicit trade. Serena Chaudhry reports.
In the diamond capital of the world, a South African project to fight illegal mining is failing. Kimberley, home to the largest man-made hole on Earth, was supposed to serve as the blueprint for national efforts to stem illicit trade. Launched 18 months ago, more than 800 unlicensed or informal small-scale miners were given the right to legally mine around 1,500 acres of diamond-rich waste fields. But the project has been hit by violence, with miners not included in the scheme attacking infrastructure and even members of the licensed cooperative. That's according to mine owner Ikapa Minerals, which is running the initiative. Chief Executive Jean Hone.
We have literally fired many thousand rounds of rubber bullet shotgun rounds to keep the illegal miners off our property on a regular basis, and our fences are continuously being ripped out, removed or just destroyed.
Illicit mining and mineral trading cost around $1.5 billion a year in lost sales, taxes and royalties, according to the Minerals Council. It was hoped that the Kimberley scheme would later be rolled out to help the gold, chrome and manganese sectors. But bringing illegal miners, or zamazamas as they're locally known, into the mainstream is proving difficult. Those not part of the cooperative have stolen fences, petrol-bombed Ikapa trucks, blocked access to roads and sabotaged a waste pipeline. Members of the project, like informal miner Victor Taku, say they are also a target.
But the problem that we are encountering now, it is from other zamazamas. The other zamazamas, when they come here, because they are not registered, they want to enter this field with force. They came here with the weapons, others came here with firearms, others come here with a spade, everything like that.
South Africa is estimated to have tens of thousands of informal miners, but its regulation of small-scale mining lags far behind its African counterparts like Democratic Republic of Congo and Tanzania. And with joblessness at an 11-year high and an economy in distress, campaigners are concerned over the project's failure. They're calling on the government to provide clear policy on small-scale or artisanal mining before it's too late. Diamonds in the area of Kimberley, mined by the cooperative, are expected to run out in about 5 years.
That's our show. Good night from Washington.